Hannah wrote his questions in Arabic, or some of the things in Arabic. So when the time comes up, he didn't tell me in English what they were.
I thought you can read that.
Do we have to answer?
No, but he did want to make the point that in the Arabic, that the word eparchy is used for the entire diocese itself, while the term archdiocese is used for the seat of where the bishop is seated.
The word eparchy.
So he wanted to say that. Now, some of these questions are very, very general, and will take very few, will not require an elaborate answer. Most of the questions here deal with marriage. Okay. Please say something about economia.
Are these directed to someone in specific?
Whoever, if nothing is specific, anyone can comment on it, and then anyone can comment on that. And then I can also comment on it too.
Okay.
So say something about economia, what economia means. We use it very often in the Orthodox Church. I know that.
Well, economia, as we understand economy, or in the terms of dispensation, or what really sums up the spirit of all the canons, isn't it? I mean, the spirit of the canons is all about economy. It's all about trying to find a way to restore people back to Christ. One of the things that Father James mentioned is, was it you or that said about your teacher who said, know your canons? Mm-hmm. He was talking about his teacher who told him, know your canons. Well, we can read, there are thousands of canons, thousands of them, and you can read and read and read and read, spend your whole life studying them. But ultimately, when in doubt, always go to the bishop, you see. And in many of our daily dealings with our parishioners and the issues that come up, we have to go to the bishop. And we have to write to him and say, well, here's the situation, and these people are asking for economy, they're asking for dispensation. That's what the spirit of economy is to allow people to do something that is usually irregular, or usually would not be done for the purpose of addressing an extenuating circumstance or dealing with a special situation. So,
if I can just add something to that. If you look at the big picture, economy is the distribution of the graces of God in general, in totality. Father's point is how it's done on a specific level, and that's with the bishop, or in some cases a priest.
And it has to be on an individual basis.
Individual and practical level, how it can be, and very often it is considered to be a dispensation.
And even in the Eastern Catholic churches and the Roman Church, there is this idea of a judicious bending of the rules on a case-by-case basis, based upon the need of the person. But this actually, I was going to read this canon anyway, and this actually fits perfectly into what we're talking about. The last canon in the Roman Code, which unfortunately, as far as I know, doesn't have an equivalent in the Eastern Code, is the epitome of what we're talking about. It says, in cases of transfer and prescripts, blah, 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 canonical equity is to be observed, and the salvation of souls, which must always be the supreme law in the church, is to be kept before one's eyes. So, to boil that down into one real quick phrase, the salvation of souls is the ultimate law. So, even in the West and the Eastern Catholic Church, as well as the Orthodox, if there is something that would be beneficial to one's salvation, then we apply economia, and we can bend the rules, but it's always meant to be seen in an individual, case-by-case basis. One permission given is not seen as a global permission for all time forever.
I would like to hear the Roman Catholic Canon Lawyer's interpretation of that.
There are several features that they've been hinting at here already, so I really don't need to talk very long. This idea of a dispensation which temporarily relaxes the law for the benefit of a certain person. And the church may or may not grant this dispensation, but when it is done as a favor for that person, and this makes it easier for that person to follow the law. This might be thought of as equity. That was a concept in Roman law. So we want to make it easy for the person to follow the law. I guess the similar concept in the Greek would be the epikeia, again, making it easy for a person to follow the law.
Right, this next question, if the person starts out by saying it seems strange, I will tell you, I have never heard of this. I think it's very simple to answer. This may seem strange, but is it possible that some Orthodox acknowledge 7 ecumenical councils instead of 8 because they are subconsciously clinging to 7 as a biblical number, and somehow romantic to think there are precisely 7 councils? I think that's a very easy answer.
Well, answer it.
No, absolutely not. I've never heard of
It's
such a
so
thing.
easy right now.
I've never heard of such a thing, and there are a significant number who are talking about 8 councils, and it was revisited by the Vatican, I believe, in the 1200s, and that's why that number stuck. That's when they finally rejected it. They did reject half the 8th council.
Abuna,
For years.
will you please talk to us?
Yes.
Not to yourself. I want to understand what you say.
Okay, next question. With regard to marriage, is it fair to say that in the West, it is merely the bride and groom who are the ministers with no role for the clergyman beyond witnessing? In comparison to the East, where the priest is the minister, isn't this really just a difference of emphasis between the two? I think this question was sort of answered, but you want to...
Well, I think it's more than just emphasis because of the fact that there's a covenant rather than a contract. And the covenant in the East between man and woman is blessed by the church, and that's what makes it a marriage, rather than the Western judicial attitude of there being contract. And part of this plays out in the marriage ceremony itself, where you see in the West how the bride is processed into the church by the father and handed off to the groom. That is part of that whole idea of property and property exchange, handing the keys over, so to speak. And so that is all part of the whole idea of there's a contract between property holders. Now, in the case of the woman, she's the one who enters the contract, but in the East, you don't have that, and I think it's more than just a simple little difference. I think it really is much more important than that. So,
it has to do with the understanding is that when a man and a woman come to the sacrament, it's not 2 people that are getting joined, it's 3. That the joining cannot happen without Christ being present in the marriage. And this is something that we explain, I try to explain it every time there's a wedding, and I give sort of a short talk of sorts, exhorting the man and the woman to take care of each other as God has instructed them to do in the wedding service, but also to let people know that there are no vows in an Orthodox wedding. People don't stand there and say, I pledge all my life to you and blah, 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 and all of this and that. The bride and groom utter only 2 words each, which is I have. And the I have is a response to the fact that they have entered into this church on their own free will, wanting with their whole heart and mind and soul to spouse this person that they see before them. So that's the whole idea, is that God is present and He will always be present, and He's the one joining, and the priest is simply a tool, an instrument.
And as you pointed out in your talk, they are crowned.
They are crowned.
Correct.
yes.
Is a court marriage valid or not valid then? Now, when couple go to the courthouse and the judge
It's not blessed.
We would see that is a civil marriage, a civil union, but it's not sacramental.
Correct.
It
It has to be blessed.
That's right.
No, there are
In
some.
fact, in some European countries, I understand the structure of the government is such that the couple has to get a civil marriage before coming to a church
In
but
Ukraine,
get blessed,
in
but we
Russia,
don't consider.
yeah,
Well, but we have a
until
form, I mean, we have a similar form here, they have to get a license,
a license.
same thing.
Father, in some places, like in Mexico, you will be, get married, if you get married by the church in Mexico, you are not legally married. You have to marry civilly also. In the United States, if you get married by the church, that's both, except that you need a license. Then after the marriage here, then we sign the papers and then we send them to the county and then to the state and that kind
How
of thing.
come it is legal to get divorced in Mexico? It will be valid in the United States?
Well, the marriage, if it's a legal marriage, in Mexico it's a legal marriage here too, But what I'm saying is that over there you have to have the two, if you want to be married by the church. It's not enough for you to get married just by the church in Tijuana or in Mexico. Because then that will not be a legal marriage, whether here or in Mexico. You will need to go and have the other second marriage, civil. In the United States, you don't need to do both. The one that you said court marriage, and then this one here. You get your license, you come here with a priest in the church, get married by the church, and you get married by both right here.
That's part of the North American
Yes.
Free Trade Agreement.
All right, Brother
Yeah.
James, you want to comment?
In the United States, and I believe also in Canada and several other countries, that happens, the mode in which we celebrate marriages here is because the priest is acting as two separate entities combined into one. First, he's a priest. Secondly, he's a representative of the state. And so I, by virtue of my ordination, become a representative of the state of California, and by the power vested in me, etc. That is going to be problematic in the future.
Yeah.
Because the state is going to start mandating that we perform marriages of same-sex couples. It's going to happen. And I've already talked to my bishop and I said, we, as a church, all the Catholic bishops in the United States need to come to agreement. Here's my proposal, my humble proposal, is that we need to withdraw that aspect of being an agent of the state and simply marry sacramental marriages, those people in our parish. And they still have to go to the civil authorities and get a civil marriage. Let's adopt that model, and then we can tell the state, we're not acting as agents, you can't tell us how to act as agents. And then let's be done with it, let's be done with it
I think we have to
now.
head that way too.
Sorry, Father,
There's no other solution.
We have to, but you
can I answer that?
Father, do you want to comment on that?
Can I-
Well, I think that as they've already stated it well, I mean, in the Catholic persuasion, the priest is there as a representative of the church. Now, for much of history of Western Europe, the church was the only game in town in terms of the government. Well, yes, you did have feudal lords and so forth, but they were very weak. Especially during the first few centuries after the end of the Roman Empire, the church was the governing and civilizing force in Western Europe. So in a sense, the church worked right along with what states there were in these days.
Okay, I'm gonna combine these.
Excuse me, Abuna.
Sorry.
Yes,
I have something to add to what Father Anthony said about vows in marriage and vows and contracts. What I have learned from the Greek Orthodox Church in Jerusalem is that we do not use the term contract in marriage because contracts, the law of contracts, have some conditions. When to start, when to end. In marriage, what God joins together, let no man put asunder. So it is a vow. A vow in the sense that it is against the contract. I vow to be with you until I die.
And beyond.
And you vow, without saying it, the priest says it during the the large prayer that we say, and those whom God joins together, let no man put asunder. So it is not a contract, it's a vow forever.
Now, this ties into the next two questions that I was going to put together. I'm gonna put these two questions together and add Father's comments to these, okay? Does the Roman Catholic Church still forbid remarriage after divorce so that couples have to prove that the marriage was invalid from the start? The next question related to that, how is divorce viewed in the Orthodox and Roman Catholic? It's read in Mark 109, what God has joined together, let no man put asunder, okay, which is Father at his point.
I'll start with the Roman Catholic.
I did not understand the question. I'm sorry. I have problems in hearing.
It's regarding divorce and the rules of divorce and remarriage in the Western and the Eastern.
Yes, thank you, Abuna.
According to the Catholic practices here, there are marriage tribunals in each Roman Catholic diocese, and the purpose of this marriage tribunal is to examine all marriages that have ended in a divorce.
Civil divorce.
Yes.
Okay.
With a view to can this person or these persons marry again in the Catholic Church. I just mentioned one of them, which is one of the oldest canons about ratum and non-consummatum, and there are many others. It would take an entire course to explain them all, but basically what the tribunal does is that we examine the marriage to find out if the people were in the right frame of mind. Did they understand what marriage is about? And there were many other things involved, but we look at the people's states of mind at or before the wedding to determine whether or not the church should grant this nullity decree. One of the most common causes for nullity of marriage would be a lack of due discretion, which could mean that the parties didn't really understand what the responsibilities of marriage should be about. It might be that someone in their family was putting undue pressure upon them to marry, and if you don't have the freedom to enter into marriage, it is by definition invalid because marriage has to have consent. So I think that's all I'll say about it.
Father James, do you have anything you want to say?
That's my understanding, and the Eastern Catholic churches would follow the same understanding in terms of divorce and remarriage and the need for submission of a case to a tribunal. And unfortunately, most of our eparchies do not have their own tribunal because we don't have many canon lawyers.
I'm going to ask Father Anthony to give an Orthodox perspective on that, but then following that, I want to ask something. Haven't there been numerous Roman Catholics that have suggested that the Catholic Church follow the Orthodox practice?
I don't know about that.
What
I do know is, unfortunately, within the Orthodox jurisdictions in America, we have varied practices. For example, the Greeks have what they know or what they call a spiritual court, where couples can go and petition for divorce. In the Antiochian Church, we don't have that. I don't think they have it on the OCA either.
Moscow Petrarch. Annulment, not divorce. Annulment.
Okay, well, that's what I wanted to emphasize, is that we don't bless divorces in the church.
Yeah.
People come to us and say we've divorced or we want to divorce. If they want the divorce, the only two acceptable conditions when it comes to a couple being together within the bonds of marriage is either reconciliation or separation. And separation is to be understood as the couple being away, the two individuals being away from each other for a while, even then with the purpose of reconciliation. But divorce, we don't accept and we don't bless. However, we understand also the human condition and that things happen. There are extenuating circumstances. There are issues where the church will show economy, and in a certain way, I don't know about the other jurisdictions. Again, it's unfortunate that we're so varied in our practices. But in the Antiochian Church, we try as much as we can to counsel the couple and even get them professional counseling if we need to, especially if the priest is not really trained in counseling couples, to try to reconcile them. And if that doesn't work and they decide to divorce anyway, they will do it civilly. And then what happens is a year after the divorce, they come to the priest. Usually the one person in the marriage who actually filed for the divorce. And there's issues of whether there was consent on both sides or not, and so on and so forth. They come and they petition the church to be restored to communion in the church, and that then becomes the decision of the metropolitan. We have to submit a copy of the divorce decree along with a personal recommendation from the priest as to what the condition of the person is, and if they see if the priest personally recommends that this person be restored based on the circumstances. So that's how we do it. And once again, it's a varied practice from other jurisdictions, even within the Orthodox Church, where we say that we're uniform in liturgy, we're uniform in prayer, we're uniform in practice, but unfortunately we're not uniform in practice in many different situations. So.
As far as theology is concerned, I would think this would be common, and we would be uniform here, that if there is a brokenness of marriage, where the people are no longer together,
Yes.
that's considered to be a brokenness.
Yes.
And therefore, any remarriage is always done as a penitential service.
Yes.
It would not be done as in the joyfulness that is incorporated in the first marriage, and so on. And it's really done by a
Yes, but again, that's economy.
Yeah.
That's dispensation. That's what, regardless of what the tone is of the second marriage, that person is restored. Eventually, they're restored, and they're back, in communion with the church and in communion with Christ. So.
Excuse me, can I have one
One
comment
minute.
about to follow up on Father James' idea about responding to the state that we're no longer be interested in setting up a ceremony for weddings. We can answer the state. I'm suggesting that we consider under the church that marriage takes place between a man and a woman, and if this condition is not valid, then therefore it's not marriage. If you want to, for some other purposes, under other circumstances, look at something humanitarian, like for insurance, for inheritance, for rights, human rights to live and inherit each other, whatever. You call it something else, but don't call it marriage, because marriage is between man and a woman.
Father,
Yes. What I wanted to say, to ask, is that as a priest, I have Roman Catholics to be wedded in the Orthodox Church. Why does not the Roman Catholic Church accept to re-wed a Roman Catholic with a divorce? And they ask her or him to have his marriage annulled, not divorced. And if the marriage, as a result of the marriage, had children, and the guys could go to the Roman Catholic court and get an annulment, what is the situation of the children? Legitimate or not?
Canon
legitimate?
1137 that I've mentioned, that exists in the Latin code only, stipulates that even if there is a decree of nullity, those children are still legitimate. Just as in the secular realm, a divorce does not make the children illegitimate.
Okay.
Legitimacy continues.
Why do they play around this situation? Go and get an annulment and we will wed you. It's not fair. It's not fair.
I think it was answered.
The result was a divorce.
Father Hannah, in the West, it's contractual. I think they answered that before, that the thinking of the West is very legalistic and contractual. While I think the ethos of the Eastern mind has always been that it is more of a donation of self, a giving of self, and would be less of a legalistic, contractual thing. So therefore, the idea of annulment fits the Western legal mind.
The model, yeah,
The model.
just like it's annulling a contract.
Yeah, and all the account, while we use a different terminology, and at some point, hopefully we can get together on this in some way. But I think that's the reason, yes?
Yeah, I like to raise a very important point that it is inaccurate to say that the Roman Catholic Church annuls marriages. Rather, the Roman Catholic Church declares marriages as null.
Yeah.
To annul something means to take something of value and to take away that value from valid to invalid. The Roman Catholic Church is simply determining whether the marriage was valid from the very start. So it's an ontological question.
If so, if as you say is right,
Yeah.
then the result of the marriage, the children born in that marriage are illegitimate.
Then they apply economia to the situation and declare them to be legitimate.
Yani salah.
Thank you very much.
What is the reason behind rebaptizing a Catholic bride marrying an Orthodox groom under an Orthodox white church? I've never heard of this, but.
What? Say that again?
What is the reason behind rebaptizing a Catholic bride marrying an Orthodox groom under an Orthodox white church?
We don't rebaptize.
I know. I never
Who
heard
said
of
that?
I think there are
Reveal yourself.
some situations, I've heard of rebaptisms taking place among some extreme,
Yeah, I mentioned that.
yeah,
Yeah.
but they're not,
But that's not canonical.
yeah.
Yeah. By the way, in one of the Arabic questions that Father Hammock had here was, that he mentioned before, was the idea of confession. And the Orthodox Church, if I could answer that, the Orthodox Church has talked about monastic confession, which is really a spiritual journeys where you confess to a lay monk or lay woman monk, okay? And which then can be blessed by an ordained priest for a sacramental blessing of the confession. But technically, confessing to a layman, even if they are a monk, would not be considered to be sacramental.
The confession in itself is not the
But
sacrament.
it is biblical, Abuna. It's biblical. The scripture says, اعترفوا بعضكم لبعض بالزلات. Confess one to another with your wrong.
Yes, but the church has not declared it to be,
But the absolution is not
yes, that's what I'm
given
talking
to a
about.
layman.
That's correct.
It must be.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, it's spiritual, but it's the absolution.
It just sounds more like spiritual direction than the Catholic tradition.
Yeah,
Well, I know of circumstances in the Eastern Church, Eastern Catholic Church, where that very situation occurs, where a monk, not ordained as a priest, has as a close relationship with a layperson, and that layperson confesses or does the standard, well, whatever you call it, standard, the normal way in which they divulge their spiritual state to this monk or nun. And then after that auricular confession type of procedure, then goes to a priest who doesn't hear anything and just simply gives them absolution.
after they've said that they have
Yes.
gone to
Yes,
direction and.
with an understanding between the monk and the priest that yes, this has happened.
I've heard the same.
Yeah. So
How does Orthodox Canon Law differ from Roman Catholic law in terms of its size and its uniformity across the Orthodox world? I think we sort of touched on that.
the medallion is a huge document,
Huge.
huge.
Yeah.
It's
But
about
also,
twice as big as this with half the size of the printing.
it's pretty well known in the Orthodox world that your bishop is the one that interprets the canons for you and tells you which ones to emphasize, am I correct, Father Anthony? Which ones to emphasize, which ones that are not really applicable in this current world. So we really take direction from our bishop on that. And because many of the apostolic canons, as you mentioned, writing with the non-Orthodox, if you look at the reason why they occurred at the time, have no validity now. So we really look to our bishops to see which canons are really important for us, given this is the 21st century and in the day and life in which we live, which was different across past ages. Is there a serious effort in the Orthodox Church for unification? What are the impediments? Why does the Orthodox Church use the old calendar?
Is that on the same card?
In the sentence.
Father, can you say those again?
Yes, is there a serious effort in the Orthodox Church for unification?
Unification أبونا نرجع نجتمع مع الغرب.
With whom?
Efforts.
Each other or with the
You talk unification between East and West. Is that?
Unification, maybe, I guess they meant to set up the Easter together.
Okay,
Easter
and then
for
there's
Easter,
also the issue of, what was the third one?
Calendar.
What the
Oh,
calendar?
why would the Orthodox, why would the Orthodox
Julian-
use the old calendar?
The
for
Julian
the Passover.
calendar.
Okay, first of all, not all Orthodox use the old calendar. There are some churches, most of them schismatic Orthodox churches that use the old calendar, but
No, we do.
They do.
In the Russian Orthodox Church, which is the largest,
I'm-
old calendar.
I know, Father.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
haven't finished yet.
Yeah.
But there are many canonical Orthodox churches. The Church of Jerusalem, some of the
Russian
churches
Orthodox.
in the Russian Orthodox Church, and the Holy Mountain. On Mount Athos, they still use the old calendar, but not all Orthodox use it, and that's become an accepted practice. One of the reasons that the main Orthodox churches, as it stands at this point, for lack of a better term, adopted the Western calendar, or the Gregorian calendar, was in an effort to unify the churches. We said, okay, well, we will celebrate Christmas and the Dormition of the Mother of God and everything else on your calendar 13 days earlier, if you would agree to celebrate Pascha or Easter on the same date as we do, following the Julian calendar, which we haven't changed. So all Orthodox celebrate Easter together, no matter what. And these guys gypped us. They said, okay, but they didn't. They stayed with the Western calendar on Easter. So
But the Finnish Orthodox Church follows the Gregorian calendar even for the Paschalian,
there you
and
go.
they're canonically Orthodox.
Last Christmas service
Good one.
in the Orthodox Church, we watched it on TV. It was a disaster. There were other communities serving at the same time. Those were singing, let's say, Armenian, and those were singing Arabic and Greek. And it was a plate of spaghetti. We could not listen to the Orthodox, we could not listen to the others. That's why in Jerusalem, unless the church unites together, they can have one service, either in the Church of the Nativity or the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. One celebration for all Christians, and two communities to serve at the same time. It's a disaster.
It's a scandal. It's
It's a
more than just a
scandal.
disaster, it's a
That's-
scandal, and I've heard of situations
That's
where.
why in Jerusalem they cannot unite in this.
Well, I've
I
heard,
pray that Pope Francis and our ecumenical patriarch Bartholomew can come together, and
But all the patriarchates are going to have to do that. That's one of the things.
I know one thing.
And Mount Athos.
I know one thing that is standing in between them, and that is Father George Morelli.
I heard a situation in Jerusalem
Yeah.
where a Muslim was talking with a devout Christian, and they got into a very heated discussion, and finally the Muslim looks at the Christian and says, how can we possibly consider joining or becoming Christian when you guys can't even agree among yourselves? So it is a great,
It is a
it's a
scandal.
great
It is a
scandal
scandal.
that keeps
Father,
people.
And
I think we-
Gandhi said, give me your Christ and keep away your Christianity from me.
I think we should pray for that this Paschal celebration and the calendar issue can be maybe resolved, and then some of the other issues and synodality in the church.
By God's
and
grace.
everything. By God's
Are there
grace.
any other questions, Father?
No, we're going to begin now the.
I have one important question. Father did not bring it yet. You have it?
Go ahead, Father.
Okay. We all know in all Christian denominations that the sacraments would be served only for baptized Christians, right? Am I right?
Yeah.
Do you all agree?
Yes.
How is it that in the Roman Catholic Church accept to wed a Christian spouse to a Muslim spouse
It's not,
without converting to Christianity?
Do they for
I suppose it's possible, I know, but I do know of other documents that frown on this practice because of the differences of the Christian and the Muslim understanding of marriage. So that is a point that needs to be discussed further.
I think they have marriages, but they're not considered to be sacramental marriages.
But
But it makes sense
but
according
would
to
be
the
a
Catholic priest
witness it.
Perform.
serve the service,
Bless it.
sacrament,
Bless it.
say the sacrament, and they say he remains Muslim and she remains Christian. What kind of economy is here?
But don't you
Well,
also have
But
from,
we're not respecting
They're
our
not sacramental marriage.
they're not a
sacraments.
sacramental,
They're
but
not
don't you also
sacramental.
have from scripture the polling privilege or whatever, where the non-Christian can be saved through the Christian spouse? Of
Yes,
course, that was prior to, the first phase one of the,
But even if we had two pagans that married each other, they would still be under natural law and civil law.
we're talking about sacrament, the sacrament of holy matrimony.
The Roman Church does not see that as a sacramental marriage.
folks, I would like to,
So-
I hate to cut off discussion here, but, it is getting late, and we did have 3 speakers, and I think this is very valuable. Now, if we could just go to the business meeting, and any questions possibly, Father Anthony, Father James, Father Raymond Cap, you'd like to contact them.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Father.
Oh.